Hello, great people out there in the world of YouTube. And today I wanted to just talk about something probably that is a little bit more personal, but really that may inspire or help or affect everyone out there. People who are just sitting there watching YouTube and thinking, I'd love to release or produce a video for YouTube, but I just don't feel like I have anything to say, or I'm too shy, or I'm too scared. And maybe my waffling nonsense will help you, or maybe not. Maybe you'll just purely enjoy seeing my plants, looking at my books on the shelf, or I don't know, my graying beard. But as a child, I was incredibly shy. I was shy to the point that it was almost debilitating disease. I found it difficult to walk in front of people. I was terrified of talking in front of people. If I was in a classroom and asked to answer a question, I would be frozen in horror and I wouldn't want to. And even worse, if the teacher said, can somebody close the windows today? And if no one volunteered, they would just pick someone and say, go and close the windows, and I would have to stand up and get one of those sticks and try and close the windows, and I would be almost collapsing on the floor in paralysis of terror. And then as I started to get to probably 10, 11, 12, I started to play European football, soccer, and even with that, I was incredibly shy. I was kind of short and fat and loved soccer and felt that I had some kind of ability developing, but I was terrified. If people came to watch the game, I'd be thinking, oh, we have some people watching us today. I can't play in front of them. It's impossible. And then as I grew 13, probably around about 13, 14, I suddenly started to shoot up in height and slim down and started to develop more and more skills and more fitness and more confidence in playing soccer, and suddenly found myself in a team that was somewhat successful and started to enjoy it when we had crowds appearing to watch us and cheer us along, and having a shot that went in and hearing the crowd cheer, or having a shot that just missed and hearing them the reaction. It was something that I started to feed upon. But I still had this tremendous terror of speaking in front of people. And for example, in the classroom, when we were asked to do a speech, I would exist in horror and terror for days, weeks leading up to this speech. And I found a little bit of a mechanism to cope with that. What I would do is we would go into the class that day. We knew it was the speeches period, and the teacher would say, who wants to go first? And I would say, me. And I would stand up and go first. And the reason that I did that was because firstly, there was no one before me to be compared to, so I could be as bad as I wanted to be and no one really cared. And secondly, the reason that no one really cared was because they were so nervous and so worried about having to get up and say their speech that they were just respecting what I was doing and the fact that I'd volunteered first. And of course, once I finished, I could sit back and I could relax and I could breathe and I could enjoy the show and also try and encourage people, because I knew what they were going through and I knew how difficult it was and painful it was. And then came a point where I started to develop a bit of a conflict in my life. I still loved soccer, but I was not so much enjoying the rigorous discipline of daily training and traveling to games and so on. But I continued playing, and of course it was a great social thing, and I was talking to people from our club every day. But I also got involved in a band, and I joined this band as a vocalist. And At this point, I was around 21, 22 years old. And I enjoyed writing with the band, and I recorded some songs in my bedroom and sent them, and they liked them, and then we were just rehearsing the songs and developing and writing new ones. And when the opportunity came, or the request came for us to do our first live concert, I was absolutely terrified. I thought, how on earth will I get up on stage to sing in front of people? And I was watching videos of people like Greg Graffin from Bad Religion, who I respect very much, and thinking, how do they do it? What do they do? And so on. And then the moment came where we were at the concert, and it was almost time to go up on stage, and I was looking at the audience, and they were running around and moshing and throwing things around and acting crazy. And I thought, actually, we have something to say. We have something about life and about society and about the environment to say. And we like our songs, we believe in our songs, we know our songs. So I started to look forward to getting up on stage. And I got up on stage and was speaking to the audience, and a few jokes were naturally coming along. And we broke into our songs, and it went really well. And we had hit or miss shows over the coming year or so. We only lasted about a year. But after that, when I entered into situations at work where I had to get up and do a presentation or something, I would think, okay, you were up on stage in front of this audience, you sang your songs, so this should be okay. It still wasn't easy, because when you're getting up and speaking in your work environment or professional environment, you're talking about something that is serious and relevant and that you may even master, but it's something that you're maybe not passionate about. When I was getting up on stage and singing for a band, I was passionate about music and passionate about the lyrics that I'd written, passionate about the delivery. And when I'm standing up presenting to a professional audience, firstly, I'm concerned that maybe they know more than I do about the subject, or that my presentation is just not good, or whatever it may be. And so this is something that remains a challenge to this day, and I'll talk further about that now, and to the extent to where, in fact, starting this YouTube channel, and one of the goals of the channel was to get some practice in speaking. Even though there's no live audience watching me, you're watching me right now, if this is published. But around about that time, I also, or several years later I should actually say, enrolled to do my bachelor's degree. I did it as a mature student, because when I finished school, my parents didn't have the money to send me to university. I was lucky enough to do a diploma in marketing and communication. And when I was finally working and earning my own money, I enrolled to do to study part-time, because I was, of course, working full-time, and do my bachelor's degree around that. And as I met people through the bachelor's degree and started to exchange, I was doing a bachelor's degree in literature, I started to develop more and more confidence in interacting and realizing that all of us are uncertain. All of us have different opinions, but we all look to each other to share ideas and opinions and our voice, and we listen to each other if we're sensible and we have any emotional intelligence. And through that, I started to grow in confidence. And again, after that, I went through a period where I lost a fair amount of weight. I started focusing on my health. I was very fortunate that I got offered a position to move to Madrid. When I arrived in Madrid, there was initially a lot of pressure because people saw me as a native English speaker and naturally expected more from me. Oh, you're a master of the language, you're comfortable in the language. And I was studying my master's degree. I had actually started it in England, and I moved to Madrid, and I was writing my master's thesis while I was working a full-time job in Madrid. And with that expectation came the request that I speak in certain events and I do presentations, and that I speak to the local people who could practice English and learn English. And so that started to form my slower speech patterns and my clarity of pronunciation. Not always, of course it's not the clearest, but I slowed down a lot, began to pronounce words more clearly at the time because I realized it was essential for people to understand me. And of course it helped me to start building confidence, to the extent that I started to interact with the communication teams, I started to interact with user experience teams, and I started to get involved in minor parts of presentations that were being done for larger audiences. And jump forward a few years again, in the US, I then started working very closely with the employee experience team, and we started to put together academies where we would educate people on Microsoft 365 tools and artificial intelligence tools, and we would talk to people about events in the organization, and we would share stories from different parts of the world and what our colleagues were doing around the world, and we would invite them to speak if they were comfortable, or to present a video, or whatever it may be. And even though I was nervous going into each one of those, they were always a success, and 99% of the time they were a success, and they were good fun and people enjoyed them. And I started to think, maybe this is something that I could do, I can really try and make something out of this. And things changed, and we changed team. I changed teams and moved into a different area. Of course, I was trying to take that those skills into any team that I work with. I tend to work with very technical people who tend to hide. They're very brilliant, intelligent people, but they tend not to be comfortable in speaking or presenting, whatever it may be. And so I try to help them to communicate and bring some light into that. But I noticed that I was starting to lose my ability to speak in front of people, and I was starting to lose the confidence and the comfort. And so I'd wanted to do something on YouTube for many years. Technically, I wasn't even sure how to do it or what to do. I just went into YouTube and started playing, create a channel. I'd created one actually over a decade ago, I think. And then I decided to record my first video, which I think was probably in January, so about 10 months ago. And one of the goals, as I mentioned earlier, was to try to build some confidence in speaking and having a little bit of an audience. And even though now I don't have a very big audience, and right now most of you will have already switched this video off or fallen asleep while it's playing. But ultimately what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is just do it. Go to YouTube, start a channel, start talking, tell your story, share your ideas. No one cares whether you look good or bad. Well, maybe some people do, but it doesn't really matter. You shouldn't care. Your story will appeal to at least one person out there who probably thinks, oh, I was wondering this, or yeah, I'm curious, I want to start a YouTube channel, or I can't speak. Maybe even someone who's young and crippled by shyness might be thinking, I have no hope of ever doing this. Well, here I am all these years later. I was crippled by shyness and now I'm speaking endlessly. And with that, I will finish off. I just wanted to say, stick with it, get out there, record something, if you want, if it interests you, if you have a desire to do so, and share your story. And I'm sure that many of us will enjoy the tale